Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode number 53 of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. I am your host, Joseph Landy Pavlon. Alongside me, of course, we have our colleagues, Justin Hebert, Daniel Ford, and we have three guests coming on tonight.
Hi, my name's Judson O'Neill.
Yeah, hey, Justin. I don't know why the microphones were coming out a little weird.
Hey guys, this is Luis Torres from Motorsports Tribune and the retired YouTuber known as Auto Rock and Racing 94.
I don't know why the audio is coming out weird. I'm here. So yeah, once again, I'm Joe, Justin, Danny, and then of course we have Judson O'Neill and Luis Torres. So excuse the audio. We're about to get this thing underway. Robbie Noonan, also known as Race Day 2011 from his YouTube channel, he's been on with us twice before. He'll be back tonight, just running late for some dinner. And yep, let's move on. So it's another week without racing. The title says more cancellations because there are more events being removed from the schedule. Most notably, the Detroit Grand Prix is off the table. It was supposed to be the temporary season opener for IndyCar. That's not going to happen this year.
Yep.
So where do we go from here? Justin, how will these IndyCar drivers fare out now that they were about to get underway at St. Petersburg, and then this happens? And now we know they're not going to be racing until June.
I think it's like the thing about it is like right now, they're doing the iRacing thing, but it was supposed to be until May 9th. They were supposed to race on May 9th, and then normally, but the thing is, they can't race until like Detroit's now canceled. Like the thing about Detroit, it's a street circuit, which is a normal thing, but like it's like in June, it's like the thing is, it's like there's different races during that time are getting like there's like Martinsville, remember like that stay at home thing in Virginia till June 10th. Like the city of Detroit might have noticed something with
Right, and plus it's a street circuit, so that's intertwined with the general public. How is that going to fare out with the city and especially Belle Isle? Not too good. Let's go ahead and take a look at the new revised schedule for the IndyCar series this year. So for now, as of April 6th, April 6th, Aaron, if you're watching, happy birthday. June 6th, literally 2 months from now, will be the Genesis 600 kilometers at Texas Motor Speedway. The supposed round one of the season will be at Texas Motor Speedway, and then nothing until Road America, June 21st. Richmond will be, of course,
on the 27th.
Right, 27th, race 3. The Indy Grand Prix, first Indy Grand Prix, because now we have 2, will be on the 4th of July with the Brickyard 400 weekend. Toronto, Honda Indy Toronto will be on July 12th as usual. Iowa will have an extra race, so 2 races for Iowa. And I think that's going to have a big effect on the way these drivers were coming into 2020 now. And it doesn't stop there. Mid-Ohio, of course, they're going to be on August 9th. August 9th for Mid-Ohio. The 104th Indianapolis 500 is on August 23rd. So Indy 500 month will be August this year. But immediately after, they go to Gateway the next week. Portland will be moved from Labor Day weekend to September 13th. Laguna Seca will have 2 races on September 19th, September 20th. The Indy Grand Prix will have another race in early October. I bet you the weather is going to be great if that happens. And the Street of St. Petersburg will have a race on a date that's to be announced, probably somewhere after the Indy Grand Prix in October.
Yep.
Is this an ideal schedule for them?
Ooh.
Honestly, at this point, with now Texas as the season opener and then St. Petersburg still up in the air when it comes to the finale, I think having double headers at Iowa and Laguna is probably the best option they can honestly do. Sure, it pains me that my possible first Indy 500 is going to be in August. Yes, it pains me that some races are canceled. But the way things are going right now, you just got to have to accept for what it's worth. And the most affordable you can do is have those double headers, which I'd imagine why they did it in the first place, especially Indianapolis, because now they'll have potentially IMSA and also the 8-hour sports car extravaganza after the Harvest Grand Prix.
We'll talk more about the schedule changes later on because we do have 2 guests in here, Judson and Louis Torres. Judson O'Neill, obviously, I've seen you in the comment section before and in the live chat previously on the podcast. I saw your content and you have great material. So, how did you start? How did you start YouTube, your YouTube channel? What made you think, okay, I'm 12 years old. This is what I want to do with my life right now?
Well, I became a NASCAR fan in 2017. A lot of people think I'm 12 years old and I'm interviewing NASCAR. I have a lot of people assume I've been a fan for a while, but I've only been a fan for almost 2 years now. So I had a YouTube channel before, and I knew so much about NASCAR and other motorsports. I figured, well, I love to talk first of all. I love to ask drivers questions, and I want to become popular on YouTube, and I want to have a career in NASCAR broadcasting one day. So I figured I'd contact some teams, email some Xfinity drivers, ARCA drivers, and I got a few responses from like Kaz Gralla, Ross Chastain, Ryan Vargas, and I ended up getting some interviews set up. And it kind of just first started as, oh, I'm gonna make a few YouTube videos on this, start a new channel, get a fresh start, and then I've been doing it as a hobby ever since. And now, hopefully, I want to have a career in this one day. I've done a little over 50 interviews now. A lot of drivers. I'll meet them at track. I'll give them my business card, tell them a little bit about myself. Usually, I'll have an interview set up. So, yeah, that's about it.
Oh, that's great. So I've seen your content. Of course, you live in Central Florida. How often do you go to New Smyrna Speedway?
Well, NASCAR races in Florida that I can attend. There's only 4, or technically 3, or 2 Daytona races and 1 Miami race. So I don't have the opportunity to go to races that much, but I figured, well, I love late model racing just as much as I love NASCAR, but it's just not as popular, so I don't have a lot of late model racing content on my channel. So I go to New Smyrna Speedway almost every race week they have there. I know almost every driver there. I haven't always done an interview with all of them. If you get me in, sometimes I'll have pit passes, but I'm best friends with the broadcaster there, so sometimes he'll let me up in the booth, help him broadcast the race. So that's pretty cool, and so I like going to New Smyrna a lot. All these drivers, you can get so up close to them, especially when you have pit passes, always walking around. So I love New Smyrna Speedway. I always love just local racing in general. It's always really exciting. And you get to know these drivers and meet them, know their personality. It's great to get to know these guys, and a lot of them, this is where they get their start. One day they could be full-time in the Cup Series, winning races. Like, they could be the next Jeff Gordon, Johnson. So it's just really cool to see all these young guys go out there to compete for wins at this track, and just get this.
Yeah, I know that because I saw your content. You've interviewed numerous drivers that are up and coming in the NASCAR ranks. And which driver do you think that you've interviewed is your favorite?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Uh, I I've done almost 60 interviews now, so it's really hard to choose one. Anthony Alfredo, I did an interview with him. He's super cool. Uh, Anthony Sergi, I've done 2 or 3 interviews with him. He's really nice, but I gotta say my favorite has gotta be mm, my one I did with Ross Chastain. That was just sticks out to me the most. It's always the one I think of first, just because how famous he is. Really, like he and Ken Schrader, I've done interviews with. Those are like the highest up guys I've done. And
So
then
yeah, what was your favorite thing about interviewing Ross Chastain?
well, he's so. Usually I'm stuck with all these part-time Xfinity drivers to interview. So that was really my first. He's only my third interview, so but I like to consider that how my big interview that kind of got me out there. It was he he was a really nice guy to talk to. Ross Chastain coming from a watermelon farming background.
Right.
It's just really cool to talk to those guys, especially how high up they are, and just get to know them. Talk to them before the race, see what they're thinking. That's just it was really cool to talk to them.
Well, that's great because Ross Chastain, he had a breakthrough 2019 season in his NASCAR career. Doesn't matter where he races, trucks, Xfinity, or even now in the Cup level. If he's behind the wheel of a race car, we know how he'll work twice as hard compared to really any other driver on the circuit to make himself known.
Yeah,
Being
and
in the small equipment that he's been in for all those years, it really does show you what passion on the racetrack looks like. And no driver other than someone like Ross Chastain could really paint the picture of what it looks like to be a passionate race car driver.
yeah, and he's done so well with these smaller teams, bringing up guys like JD Motorsports. He hasn't won with them yet, but just they were a small team. They never really contend for wins, but now with him there, he's kind of the leader of that team.
He
Uh,
brought them in the top 10 finishes, places
yeah,
they've
and
never been.
yeah, and they've got a lot of top guys in their system now, like Jesse Little, Colby Howard, Ryan Vargas. So JD Motorsports is definitely a great team for a younger driver to get started. And like Nice Motorsports, for instance, they were the kind of truck series team that run just 20th, 15th every week. They weren't really out there. Now they hadn't been competing that long. They've only been competing since 2016, I believe. He's brought them up. A quick start for them. Team since just 2016, they're already contending for truck championships. So it's pretty cool how he's been able to bring these small teams up into victories and racing too. That's another one. So when he first joined them, I didn't know nearly as much about NASCAR as I did. But I was like, okay, I didn't even know about college racing. So and now that he's winning with them, it's really cool to see what he's done with these smaller teams.
Yeah, he's brought them really up to the top. They've never been in that situation before. And I think
Yeah,
that win in Daytona was so special for colleague racing.
yeah, and he just kind of started out small. He competed a little, just I don't barely any ARCA races. He in the truck series back since 2011. It's hard to believe it's been that long. He's still young, and he wasn't really at the beginning. It's the first few years of his career. He wasn't really his name wasn't really out there. He was just kind of an average driver back there. Occasionally getting some top 20 finishes, and then he went with JD Motorsports. That's kind of got how he got his start, really, with JD Motorsports, and just kind of moved with them. And eventually, was able to go to the full time Truck Series and Xfinity Series. And he got a full time Cup opportunity. Well, not so much the best team, but still, when you go full time in Cup, it means you're a pretty talented driver.
And
So
the door opened for him in Roush Fenway Racing after Ryan Newman's injury.
Yeah.
Brought him in, and now he's where he's always wanted to be. This is like the best chance for Ross Chastain to make a name for himself, and he's
Yeah. And I
definitely.
honestly think that he's on the right path.
Yep.
yeah, and I think it's super awful what happened to Newman, but at least they were able to find a really good driver. Because I heard rumors about David Reagan coming in, which not that David Reagan's a bad driver, he's definitely a really talented driver. It's just he never really found success in NASCAR.
And he started his career at Jack Roush's team, but he also made it known that after the Daytona 500, I want out.
Yeah. So I hate to see David Reagan go. He used to be one of my favorite drivers. But I don't pick favorites now just because I interview them. I don't like picking.
Yeah, I think every driver has a good background, a good story among themselves. That's what makes NASCAR what it is, in my opinion. But going back to some of the other drivers you've interviewed, I know you've interviewed Joe Graff Jr. not too long ago. You actually interviewed him after a race. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was at the Daytona Xfinity race. I had pit passes thanks to Tommy Joe Martins. I got a Martins Motorsports hat on right now. He's the one who made all this going to Daytona really happen. My family can't afford to take me to that many races, but he was able to get me in, and so we were sitting in the fan zone. I was in there just because after any wrecks would happen, I couldn't stay after because I had the New Smyrna race to go to that same night, so I wasn't going to be able to get any interviews done after the race. So I figured I would stay in the infield. It's not the best place to watch the race, but when a driver wrecked, I figured I'd go to the garage area since I had garage passes, and talk to them, see if they were up for an interview. And so I went to the garage area, and I see Joe Graff Jr.'s hauler. I know he had been taken out, and he's one of the more top NASCAR prospects. A little bit underrated in my opinion, but I figured I've been trying to contact this team, and I really wanted to get an interview with him done. So I asked one of his workers there, or is it actually his girlfriend there? She had a Joe Graff Jr. shirt on or something, and she said he's in his hauler. So he came out. I talked to him, and then he let me come in his race hauler and showed me around that. And so we went inside to an interview. It was still 28 laps to go. So luckily, I didn't miss too much. There's coming towards the end of the interview, there's a big wreck. There's a TV next to me in his hauler, so I could still see what's going on during the race. I wasn't really paying attention to the race because I was talking to him, but it was really cool talking to him. He's definitely one of my favorites I've interviewed too. There's a guy in there. He's sponsored by Eat Sleep Race. There's the same guy there. I believe the owner of Eat Sleep Race. He was in there. They've started this kids program too, where they have some kids coloring books and books for kids and NASCARs, NASCAR books for them. So if you guys want to check that out, just look up eatsleeprace.com and you can find that on there. He's a really nice guy. He's actually talking about sponsoring my channel one day. So, but Joe Graff Jr., that definitely, he and Ross Chastain, probably my favorite.
Yeah. Speaking of eSleep Race, I buy all their stuff all the time. They got some of the coolest shirt designs. Like if you're a car guy in general, or a NASCAR fan in general, there's definitely something up there for you. If you're into the imports scene or a muscle car guy or an exotic car guy, there will be something for you. So definitely go and check those guys out.
Yeah, they're really the brand name too. Just having a shirt on of that, it seems like any person who likes cars, that'd be good. Eat Sleep Races for you. So that's pretty cool. And so after the interview I did with him, we actually walked around, and so they were pulling up Austin Cindric and Justin Allgaier's car from when he wrecked. So Austin Cindric's was on this trailer, and it came up. So Justin Allgaier's his had come up. His just came rolling in, and his stopped maybe 6 or 7 feet away from where we were standing. He thought he was gonna hit us. But he stopped, climbed out of the car. I got a few videos of it. It was pretty cool. I haven't uploaded my footage from Daytona yet. I've uploaded from the Busch Clash, the ARCA race, and the New Smyrna ARCA East race. But in the garage area, Kenny Walsh was in there. And so really, it's hard to obtain garage passes. I don't think you can buy them, but usually you have to have a crew member driver get you in. So since Tommy Joe Martins got me in, I was in there, and they just, when they cut off the pieces of the car that they won't be able to use next week, they just usually throw them away, or just if there's any fans walking in there like I was, I'll give you a piece of the sheet.
They'll sell it.
So,
it's really cool.
Yeah, I was behind me actually. See, that's Brett Moffitt's sheet metal from when that race, because they cut it off the car and just handed it to us. So it's probably worth somewhere around $200. So, just to be able to get that for no price at all was pretty cool. So, but Joe Graff Jr. definitely really nice guy, really talented race car driver, and I'm excited to see what his future holds.
Oh yeah. So with that said, we'll get to Luis pretty soon. But Judson, while you're at it, what are some of the other drivers you've interviewed? I know you've interviewed Steve Phelps, who is on the board of NASCAR.
Yeah,
What
I
was
just
that
recently
like?
got that up. I totally forgot about that. That's one of my. I
I
love
was eager to
talking.
ask.
Yeah, he unfortunately the interview didn't record for some reason. I was really sad. I talked to him for about 20 minutes. I met him at Homestead. I like to consider myself good friends with him. Not really. I just like to to say that makes me sound kind of cool. But I met him at Homestead, so he told me since he usually spends a lot of time in Daytona Beach, and I live about 30 minutes north of there, come down and see him sometime. But hopefully soon when all this is over, I'll be able to go sometime during the Daytona race. But he, I interviewed him. I talked to him. I think he is a great, uh, well, take out for Brian France because he's changed the sport in such a good way, and I was even thinking about before I interviewed him to make a video on him of how good a job he's done. Brian France, I hate to say it, but he's kind of completely ruined the sport, um, a little bit,
You're
and
not
so
wrong.
he Steve Phelps has brought greatness back to NASCAR. I mean, he's changed the aerial package of the cars, which, in my opinion, the racing last year and this year has been way more exciting than years past. It's definitely more exciting now. I really any race, I'll sit there and watch 500 lap race without any cautions, and the drivers are spread out and still think it's entertaining. But just because I think that, but the racing this year was way better than the years past, and he's done such a great job. And I talked to him. He wants to add so many more short tracks to it, like
Mhm.
Fairground Speedway, Rockingham, which Rockingham hopefully in the next few years after their big project they're going to be having, it'll be able to get on the schedule. Nashville Fairground Speedway. I used to live in Nashville and I'd go there a lot. I knew quite a lot of drivers there. I still interview some that are there, but it's a great track, and I think that's what NASCAR needs. But one thing he talked about is these tracks, it's not like NASCAR can just say, well, we want to race on this track, so let's go and put this on the schedule and get the cars out there. These tracks have to pay lots and lots of money to hold a NASCAR race there.
Yeah,
You can't just have a NASCAR race there. All these other tracks like
it's
Texas
a
Motor.
lot of
They
let's
need they
what
need contracts.
yeah what
Yeah,
it's pretty much a long list of things that you have. It's like the logistics going into this is just immense. So you know there's just so much have to going on, and you just can't go through it with the snap of your fingers, and it happens just like that.
yeah, and it's hard for tracks to be on the Cup Series schedule, especially, and it's not like the Fairground Speedway is in really conditioned for a NASCAR race to be held there. Sure, they have ARCA races there and stuff, and I've been there, but it's a smaller track. All the drivers they probably wouldn't have room for all their haulers there. They'd have to completely redo the track. There's obviously not enough seating there. I mean, there's lots of seating, but it's not going to hold a crowd of you know
No, it can't hold a
75.
crowd of what the average NASCAR Cup track can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's smaller, which
Although it would be really interesting to see it go down, but I don't think that is possible.
yeah, and I hate that it's the Fairground Speedway with all these financial struggles and everything. My dad, he's best friends with Nick Formosa's daughter actually, so he's he's known her for a long time. So Nick Formosa, hopefully he'll be on my show sometime soon. But it's hard for these little tracks like this who are having trouble even still running these late model races here. It,
That's the
it
scary part.
yeah, I just hate to see tracks like that go away, especially when they're so close to you. Since I used to live in Nashville, and that's definitely still one of my favorite tracks. And it's like an example here. We have it. Things have to be just right with the track for a Cup Series race to be held here. There's and at the Nashville Fairground Speedway, there's probably not even enough room to have all the Cup cars on pit lane.
And on top of that, you need there's definitely no garage.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's a very very tight paddock. I mean, they
yeah,
had Cup races before, but
Yeah.
for a modern NASCAR Cup Series race, that's a tall order. They need to do a lot to make that track usable by the current Cup Series.
yeah, and I'm sure even though with these giant haulers, if they were to manage to get all these haulers in the infield, which I'm sure they couldn't, even just half of them would be a struggle getting in. The Fairground Speedway, I've been in the pits many times there. It's a really tight squeeze there. As all these drivers, all these local guys, they're having to just go in these little tiny spots and just set up a tent in their trailer. And still with all these guys in their little tiny trailers and tents all around the racetrack and the infield, it's still barely enough room for those guys. So for NASCAR, especially if they had all three series race there, just one, it would be really big struggle for them.
That's a really good point because a lot of people seem to forget the the 1.5 mile oval in nearby Lebanon, Tennessee, called the Nashville Super Speedway,
And I was
which
actually going
NASCAR and IndyCar ran in the 2000s. But of course, due to financial issues, the track has closed and it's only for testing.
Yeah, and I was actually going to touch on that in a second. So the Nashville Super Speedway, I went there. I've been there about 3 times. I've never got into it. I've driven there, driven around the whole thing. It has security there right now. I think Nissan or Toyota or something. It's just a storage facility for all their overflow cars. But it was such a great track. All the racing was exciting there. I watched. I wasn't really a NASCAR fan. I was barely alive for any of the races at Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. So I always rewatch. So it was so exciting, such a great track. It's just here's the main problem with it. It's just first of all, it's in the middle of nowhere. Second of all, it's the location. People don't really go to Nashville to see a NASCAR race. They usually go there for other tourist attractions, but in my opinion, since I lived there for so long, Nashville's a little bit overrated. It's not actually as cool as people think, but that besides the point. Nashville Super Speedway, one giant issue they had though was the seating. After a tornado, it knocked down a lot of the seating, and so they really didn't have enough. And Denver Motorsports wasn't willing to put any more money into putting these grandstands in. They had already put so much money into building the track and hosting these truck and Xfinity races. So it's hard, but it's such a great racetrack, and I just hate to see it closed down nowadays. And you can't even get close to it. Closest I got was
They won't let you.
Yeah.
yeah. There's one I tried. There's this gate. It was open. I didn't see a security guard there, so I was driving with my dad, and he's like, "Let's go in." And then we were driving into it, and so we see this truck carrying all these cars in, and then some dude stops and says, "Hey, you're not allowed in here." And so we unfortunately had to go out.
I think
But
Nissan does testing over there with their
yeah,
passenger cars,
yeah. Sometimes I'll see like
and they used to do GT Academy, if you remember, for you Gran Turismo fans out there.
Oh yeah.
they have a lot of things on YouTube where people have tested there a lot. And one thing too that they still have going on, the Rusty Wallace racing experience. It's basically the Richard Petty racing experience, except it's it's a little different. The cars are slightly different. It's more of a Gen 4 kind of car. It's not nearly as popular as the Richard Petty racing experience. It's not really at a lot of these bigger tracks like Daytona and Texas and everything, but it's at Nashville Super Speedway. They still, if you're willing to pay $300 to do some laps around that track, you can still go there and do it now. My dad, a few years ago, he did not a few years ago, it was back in like 2009 he did it. He did the Richard Petty racing experience around Daytona, but it's a pretty cool to go. You can do ride-alongs there, but that's really all they've been doing at the Nashville Super Speedway there. So it's sad to see tracks go like that.
Right, and the Richard Petty driving experience was on the extinct Disney World Speedway in Orlando, Florida. If you remember, that track hosted the very first IRL race back in 1996 and hosted a few Truck Series races. as well, and they ran those IRL races in January, which is a very weird time. But what they were mostly known for in Orlando, of course, were the what's it called? The Richard Petty driving experience that you just talked about, and there has been a lot of incidents that happened at the Walt Disney World Speedway with the driving experience and the driving instructions. Gary Terry back in 2015, half a year before the track got taken down, he was fatally injured during a crash during the exotic driving experience, and he was in the passenger seat of a Lamborghini Gallardo. So that's just an incident, and it got controversial, and there was parking issues, and unfortunately the track was demolished for more parking places for the Walt Disney World parks.
Let's not forget it's also the site of Sam Schmidt's driving career coming to an unfortunate halt.
Right. Unfortunately, he was paralyzed in a crash that happened in 2000.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate and very sad.
Yeah.
It was actually a preseason testing.
Yeah.
Because the year prior he won the Vegas race with the sprint, back when he had sideburns and all of that in the sprint car. The sprint telephone car, not the sprint cars. Get my drift.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, and the Walt Disney World Speedway it was another great track, and there's one thing I was gonna touch on there, but I totally forgot. I blanked out. Clint Boyer, he tested there a few times, but it's Walt Disney World. It's such a popular place, and it already is so crowded. They really need those parking spots, and the track wasn't. It was losing popularity. It's not like it. It didn't have any major races there anymore by the time of its declining. Some truck races there. I believe some super late model races. Donnie Burkhart. I'm having an interview with him soon when racing gets started. I know him. He won the final Pro Truck Series race at that speedway back in 2015. So pretty interesting track. And like I said, it's so sad to see all these tracks. All tracks really. Every track is unique in its own way. Just seeing all them get demolished or just abandoned, it's just awful to see.
Yeah. So, with that said, there's a lot of oh my gosh, the RCR teammates took each other out in the iRacing race.
Wow.
If you're watching on NBCSN, that got me sidetracked. But some of these racetracks that may have lost their touch in the past, like not just Nashville Super Speedway or Walt Disney World Speedway. Of course, we know Walt Disney World's no longer there, but other racing circuits. One that may have almost lost its life in 2018, Irwindale Speedway in California, formerly known as the Toyota Speedway, when they hosted the Toyota All-Star Showdown, which used to be a classic January NASCAR event.
Which honestly, it should still be a part of it. Sure, the closest thing we have is the Sioux Chiefs Challenge, but at the end of the season or gathering with everyone, that's what they need. Not just the regionals, but get the modified guys and the locals as well. Boy, those were barn burners, classics on the Speed Channel.
Right. I've watched the marathon of those races, and then we can notice some of the drivers who may have made it to the Cup Series, who may not made it, had these big contracts, would actually go race in the Toyota All-Star Showdown, which I found very fascinating if you really think about it. But also in that sense, the Tokyo Drift that happens on a weekly basis at Irwindale, California, it's a hotspot for drifting.
Well, Irwindale is the hotspot. Well, by the way, it's not. It's Formula Drift. By the way, they always have their season finale at Irwindale Speedway, and it's been happening since. I think it's been happening since 2004. Yes, 2004. So, man, I'm glad to see it's still up there.
for sure. If you remember, January 2018 was supposed to be their farewell tour before being
Yeah.
shut down. And after all the hard work by the pleading fans and the workers alike, because imagine the jobs would be gone for some of those workers. They wouldn't have anywhere to make money. And that would have just been a huge blow to everyone. But rallied together and the track still exists. So that's great.
But one thing about Erindale that I just found out today. Guess who owns the track?
Tim
Hut. He's the father of driver Trevor Huddleston.
Yep, and if you remember that thrilling finish with Trevor and Tanner Gray, his father couldn't contain himself. He's like completely speechless.
Yep.
That Irwindale race was really good. I think it's probably my favorite race from that season, 2019, from the West Tour.
Yeah, Tim Holson, he kind of saved that track. Bought it back in 2017, 2018, and it says it'll remain open for at least another 2 years, but we don't really know.
I hope it stays.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I hope
they've
so.
had trouble with it almost being closed and demolished back 2013, 2015, 2017 now. So right now it says it'll stay open for the next 2 years, but that was as of 2018, I believe.
Yeah, we were it was a very close one from being demolished, and like, so yeah, I'm just glad that that's there. And now unfortunately the fairground speedway is in that position because we hear the rumors about the MLS stadium, the possible MLS stadium.
The thing about Southern California, it seems like there's always a stadium of some capacity trying to threaten a racetrack. I know the Anaheim Angels, yes, I'm still calling them the Anaheim Angels in a bitterly way as a San Francisco Giants fan and a Mariners fan. But anyways, that's another top for another time. Like Long Beach, it could have lost its rights, but fortunately they saved the street circuit for a good 35, 40 years now. Yep.
Long Beach was almost put at jeopardy.
Yep.
So yeah, we got some questions here. Joe, who was on with us last week, has this question here. He said, my question for everyone: how big of a hurt do you think the short tracks are feeling with the current hiatus of car racing?
Oof.
I know Evergreen are dealing with that tremendous pain right now because that's a short track in the Pacific Northwest that really needs to continue thriving, because that's another thing about certain racetracks. They have to pay a lot to host ARCA and other stuff. And then without ARCA being in the equation, they really just have the Summer Showdown and the Mark Galloway 150, if I remember that's how it's called. Without certain racing going on, it's going to hurt them budget-wise, especially the much smaller tracks. So I think this is a big, dire straight situation where this is going to really, really hurt them. And if they don't get any racing action soon, we're looking at more possibilities of those tracks going away, which will totally be heartbreaking.
You know, that leads me to this other question. What about the workers? People who, you know, who work at a short track, who work at any racing circuit, and there's so many people out of jobs right now, being laid off or being paid less.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate,
What is this
man.
going to lead us to?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, I think, in my opinion, it's all going to cycle through. Once this blows out or blows over, whatever you call it, shortly in the summer, everyone's saying, "Oh, this is going to go away in the summer." Can't confirm that.
Yeah. I hope so.
Even then, we all got to hope for the best. A lot of people
Yeah.
are assuming that if there's going to be a rescheduled event, it will happen this fall. Of course, last week we learned that Wimbledon, the famous tennis event in the UK, was taken off, completely canceled. the Players Tournament. I think it's in Augusta, Georgia. Canceled. And actually, I think they moved the date to November. I have to look. What I'm trying to say is like, what's going to happen? With these sporting events, the people that need their jobs. How are we going to go? How are we going to move forward? Or do we just have to wait?
I think it comes down to people just use some common sense, use their heads, as Joe Nemechek typically commonly said back in the day. Some people's got to have to use their heads, do their part as best as possible, and just hope this just gets better and better. Hope this thing just slows down, because if people are still not using their heads and do non-essential things like the spring breaks and whatnot, it's going to take much longer than it needs to be, honestly.
I think you made a great point there, but eventually we just have to deal with the discomfort. This is not a pleasant situation. No one wants to be in this. I think we can all. Just be patient. Yes.
Yep.
It's pretty much all we can do. Just be patient, do your part, use your heads, and just let this and just to try to explore different things. I think for some, this could be a time to reflect on the right and wrongs you've done in life, or just think about where you're at. And there's so many things you can do in the meet. I'm sure all of us want to be in the race. I should be preparing for Long Beach, but obviously Long Beach is dead in the water till 2021. So you got to do what you can, and I think some people are enjoying the sim racing, the esports. Some just wanted to return that got to rely on nostalgia. There's no wrong in that. It's just a matter of preference of what you want to do with your time and make the most of it, and just hope for the best.
Right. So yeah, Robbie has joined us. Robbie Noonan, Race Day 2011, is here for the third time on the Below the Yellow Line podcast. 3 times and counting. How's it going, man?
And I've never been on time for any one of them. It's always been like I'm always either eating dinner or I'm about to go out shopping, and then I get an email from you.
Well, you're here, man.
At least I'm here. That's good. To follow up what Luis just said. By the way, hi, nice to meet you. By the way,
Yeah, you bet.
It's like I literally, this all happened the week of Sebring, and I was literally packing the night before, and then all of a sudden they call off the race, and I'm like, oh. And then I can only imagine what the freelancers must be going through, because at least for me, I have a steady job. Like I work 9 to 5. I'm a software engineer. I do what I do. But those freelancers, man, God help them. I don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for. Whoa. Oh, all right. As I was saying, it is definitely difficult, because I know guys like a David Land or a Joey Barnes, a Christopher the Hardys of the world, even a Dalen Barr. Sure, Dalen's got the photography side of it, but when you have nothing going on, it's going to be very difficult for those guys. Like you said, I have pretty much not necessarily a 9 to 5 job, more or less like a 7 to 5 job on weekdays. As far as a job that I will not go public on saying, that allows me to go to those races and do the stuff that I do for Motorsports Tribune. And without any racing, it's very difficult to do what I love, which I hope eventually to turn it into a profit by covering motorsports.
That's awesome. I'm a photographer personally. I am not like a freelancer, but more like a hobbyist kind of side. What I do as a hobby, 9 to 5 I work, and now, but with this new job I started, I'm literally 20 minutes away from the airport. So it's like if I want to go to Indianapolis for the weekend, I can do that. It's amazing.
It's like dreaming. Oh, what could I do? The things I could do when I leave this job. Go right to an airport. Leave.
Yeah, like from where I'm from in the state of Washington, I say, what is it, a 5-minute drive to a regional airport, half an hour to SeaTac. It's super convenient. Sure, nonstop flights can be a pain depending on the budget, but At least we got airports nearby to make it a lot easier. And boy, Indianapolis, when that time comes, I'll be looking forward to it, even though it's not in May.
I know, like I had my hotels booked and everything. I got to reschedule everything. I'm going to the Grand Prix, the doubleheader weekend. I'm going to the 500, and I'm actually going to the new one that they literally just announced today. Doing all three.
It happens that it falls on my birthday weekend, so I pretty much almost got to be obliged to try to do all three Indianapolis events, which would be a challenge. And that in itself is an understatement.
It's a logistical nightmare for me as well because I got to rack up the cash because that weekend is Indianapolis, and I'm gonna do St. Petersburg because we have family that lives over in Tampa. We got to go visit them, and then the week after that's Petit Le Mans.
Right. That's the thing, because I was gonna go to Homestead, I was gonna go to Martinsville, and I'm over too. And I could go to Loudon later this year. I have family up in that area, so I can easily attend New Hampshire. But I really don't know. Wow, William Byron just moved Parker Kligerman out of the way. If you're watching the iRacing,
Must have learned something from Timmy Hill.
yeah, he clearly learned from what happened in Texas last week. But
And to add on to that, so like you mentioned, the races. Mine was the Daytona 500. I was not there in the Monday portion. I was forced to go home because I couldn't book a flight to another day. I was going to go to St. Pete, but financially wasn't there. Long Beach, Coda, Belle Isle, Cup, Texas. That is my core, my heavy load for this year. Zip, except for the Indianapolis 500, which is pretty much my number one priority for the rest of the year, along with the finale at Phoenix, if it's still going to be the finale.
That's going to be a big question because that's refer to Joe. I'm not sure. Did they rebook Homestead at all, or they're still in the talks of that?
there's no talks about Homestead. I'm still looking for a specific date. I would love to go. I was planning to attend, and then unfortunately, once I didn't plan to with.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, we apologize for that.
My bad.
I didn't plan on canceling my trip when NASCAR canceled the race. I did when they announced that people with garage passes will have extra restrictions. So everything I was planning to do at the racetrack was virtually impossible. So I had no choice but to make the decision. And then, of course, NASCAR later on said Atlanta Homestead will have no fans. Then just a day later, no racing.
Yep.
Yeah, you gotta think about the drivers. It's probably really tough for them too, and especially now that we're gonna have to add a few more double headers and midweek racing. All this pressure is on the drivers and crew members. It's already hard enough for those guys to be away from their families and just spend their entire year going out to race every week and just having a day or two off, get in a race car, drive 200 miles per hour, sweat for 3 hours straight. So it's really tough for all these drivers and crew members.
Yeah, like the teams are based in Charlotte, and trying to go to Charlotte, that's like basically go to a track, go back to Charlotte, and then the crew has to try to get the cars already done, like in advance, put them in the hauler, go to the next track, do the same thing.
What I'm trying to say is, are the midweek races ideal for this current situation, or is that too big of an order?
I think it's already enough stress for all these teams to just go out once a week to all these racetracks. But midweek racing, sure, NASCAR wants to fit in all 36 races this year, but that's not going to happen. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Not at this point.
Yeah.
Sure, all these fans want to see midweek racing, but it's too much pressure on these drivers and crew members. And if there's going to be no off weekends too, way too much stress on those guys. It's especially those crew members too. It's NASCAR's never going to be able to fit all those races in, and they'll just have to expand it till January and then just start off back in February or something. But it's midweek racing, sure, entertaining for the fans, not so much entertaining for the drivers.
Yeah.
All right. So, with that said, now let's get into a few topics here. We've not gotten into a lot of these things, but there have been more than 100 athletes this week that have joined celebrities in donations for relief for the people who are working to combat the COVID-19 outbreak, this pandemic that's going on. Also, we said before, Virginia orders a stay-at-home policy through June 10th, putting Martinsville May 9th on jeopardy. Unfortunately, if you saw my Twitter post earlier this week, the World Racing Media trip to Martinsville has been canceled regardless of what NASCAR's decision is. They've not formally postponed the race at Martinsville, but it's heading towards that direction.
Yeah.
NASCAR announced also this week that their new next gen Cup car that was scheduled to debut in 2021 will be delayed until 2022. Let's talk about the new car.
Yeah, and
Is
it's
this the
great
right
that you
move?
brought that up. I totally forgotten about that, to be honest. But yeah, delayed another year. Uh, it hasn't happened yet, but still, it's gonna happen in the future, and it's the next gen car. Really, this is gonna depend on NASCAR's future. NASCAR's slowly declining. Now, lately, ratings have been going up. It's been way more entertaining racing, but NASCAR these past few years kind of been in jeopardy. Fans don't really people just don't really enjoy NASCAR that much. I don't know why. I love it, but it's just it's not really the NASCAR it used to be. And when I spoke with Steve Phelps, he told me that he really wants to bring the stock back in stock car, and I think that's what the next gen car is going to do. It looks nowadays all these cars look the exact same, and I'm not just talking about NASCAR. On the roads, these cars look exactly the same, and
You're
people
not
say
wrong. You are not wrong.
and in NASCAR, all these people who criticize NASCAR are like, oh, these stock cars, they all look alike, except for the paint scheme. It's like nothing different. So, if it's a stock car, all these cars on the road, they all look the same. So NASCAR is supposed to be stock car. Well, there you have it. It's a stock car. It looks the exact same as all the cars on the road. They all look the same. Unless you want to change it, this it's gonna be the same. All these cars now look
And
exactly the same.
if you understand the specs, they kind of are on the same spec suspension wise and everything. Really, just the engine power plants are individualistic without much to say upon that. Like they work on their own stuff. If everybody worked on the same cars, it wouldn't make sense.
I just see it as more time to develop the darn thing, because I think one of the more bigger mistakes they made with the COT back in 2007 is they just split it in half, and where they could have honestly taken more time to develop it. If you put more time into the development of this 2022 car, I think it'll bode them so much better, honestly. And who knows? It gives more time for drivers to test it out, more time for drivers to develop it, and we'll maybe see some better results out of it.
That's what Formula One did with their car in 2021. They were supposed to have a new car coming out, and with the situation going on, because if you think about it, all their test sessions are off the table due to COVID-19. Their planned dates to get the cars out, have drivers test, are virtually impossible. You look at the NFL today was supposed to be their first, for many teams, supposed to be their first scheduled day for training camp. They, of course, cannot do it.
That is correct. They had a whole development freeze too. Like, it's not just going to be not having the next new car next year. They're literally going to take the 2020 cars and it's going to be in 2021. They're going to have the same car next year. They're going to run it for 2 years in a row, the same chassis. So they're going to have a development freeze, and hopefully in 2022, with more development in the car, I've heard so many good things about that car. I mean, I've heard a lot of aerodynamics are going to play into effect to make the less. They essentially say they're going to create clean air, but I don't believe that. But it should be better for slipstreaming and passing.
Everybody's going to win in the end.
Yeah, like people are saying about, oh, NASCAR's doing the wrong decision with that. Just the Gen 6 is garbage. They need the Gen 7 already. It's like, but they
You
haven't.
want to get it right before
Like-
you race with them.
They've only tested a couple tracks. That's the thing. They tested at Homestead. They tested at Auto Club. They haven't tested at much tracks.
They were going to do Atlanta, but obviously that's when the whole, as I like to call it, the wave happened.
Yeah. Like they can't. There's some tracks they can't test. They need to know what the car does at different tracks.
Yeah,
I mean, you
and
could
one
do-
thing
you
I
go-
find really
Go ahead.
interesting is all these drivers, or not drivers, but all these fans who criticize what NASCAR does. They're always asking for NASCAR to change the schedule or change this, change the way the cars are. Then NASCAR does it, and fans criticize them. NASCAR fans wanted a schedule change. They didn't want the same schedule that's been going for so many years in a row. They wanted a change. So Steve Phelps changed it. And
Yeah.
then NASCAR fans get mad at him for taking Homestead out of the championship race.
They want what they can't have.
Exactly. And which now Steve Phelps doing an amazing job. So he's gonna
Yes.
raise NASCAR up. He's gonna bring it back to its old glory. He's doing a great job. Now moving Phoenix to the championship race. It's now usually Phoenix won't produce that great of racing. The race we saw, the race at Phoenix this year, a beautiful race.
Brilliant race.
That was a very exciting race.
Yeah.
Definitely way better Phoenix race than usual. So not that Phoenix is a bad track for the championship race, but I prefer Homestead just to stay. Now I'm not criticizing Steve Phelps. He did what the fans wanted. He's listening, and with doing this next gen car and changing the aerial package, ever since he stepped in to his role as NASCAR president, it's been nothing but uphill. He's been doing such a great job, and I cannot wait to see what this next gen car is going to do, because this really he's when I spoke to him, he just wants to bring the stock back in stock car. He thinks this racing is going to be way better than it was before, and I think it is. What he's done so far has been good, so maybe it'll continue to be that way.
And who knows, after what happened to Phoenix, maybe they'll probably enjoy the championship venue being in Phoenix, which, of course, I think the main reason why they got it is because they did all the renovations and it makes it look more aesthetic, and also it's much closer to a lot of stuff in the Phoenix area compared to Homestead in Miami, which is a bit more longer. This one is a little bit much shorter, and I think what Phoenix done, being there last November, they've done a phenomenal job. Do I agree it being in the finale, aside from being a West Coast guy? To an extent. I think if we see something like we did the last race to date, I think the championship will be good. Sure, and I've seen some people that really miss the old Phoenix when it was Phoenix International Raceway. Well, obviously it's Phoenix Raceway, but back then it was PIR when it had the Goodyear bridge that you can walk through and all of that.
I remember that bridge. The rumble
I remember
strip
that.
on the kink on the dog leg.
And when they had like a huge gap between the spectator wall and the track wall. Oh, looking back at the 1988 Phoenix Cup race a couple weeks ago, it's come a real long way. Sure, some people like the old Phoenix compared to the current one. When you look at Phoenix then and now, it's been a 90-day difference in the past 30 plus years.
And you know what? Yes, you can still have a race with the start-finish line on the other side. Just paint the line and use it there. It's not that hard. I mean, personally, I like the new Phoenix Raceway. In my opinion, the track is great for a championship race, but I feel like in 2020 that might not even be the case because that's scheduled for November the 8th, and there might be a few races after November 8th in NASCAR. So be prepared for that.
Who would be against that? I wouldn't.
Honestly,
Time will ultimately tell, but being from the West Coast makes it super convenient. If it's like Homestead or even Atlanta may not be too difficult, but if it's Homestead, then it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
You
and
got
I
to do
think
the West Coast swing anyways.
Phoenix, after that Cup race, at first I was kind of iffy about that being the championship race. Homestead or Phoenix wasn't always that exciting. I never really hated it, but it wasn't really one of my favorite tracks. It just the racing was okay there. Wasn't anything exciting like Daytona. Obviously, there won't be any track as exciting as those two. But it wasn't really your average track racing. It was just kind of another one of those boring race. Not it wasn't boring to me, but just not. It wasn't nearly as exciting as NASCAR is. And now after this Cup race they had this year, it proved to me, hey, I'm ready for this championship race, and which I think it'll probably be more exciting than Homestead. After that Cup race, I'm really excited to see the championship race there.
Right. So let's move on down. We see. Unfortunately, we have to face reality. The Texas World Speedway is scheduled to be torn down. We heard a post from this week. I look at I forgot what source said that, but Sports Energized. First of all, here's a personal question asking me, "Hi Joe, are you coming back to SBC camp?" Yes, I'm scheduled to. I'm planning to come back if they do happen. If Sports Broadcasting Camp comes back to South Florida this year with the ongoing situation, hopefully it will be a thing. But if it's going to happen, I am planning to be there. But let's talk about Texas World Speedway for a moment. Is this the right thing for them to do? I mean, NASCAR has been testing, and that has been a test track for its waning years. And
That's a very difficult question. It's been a long gone speedway. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been so far gone that it really would have to take millions among millions of dollars to even renovate it. At this point, you hate to see it go, but at the same time, you don't want to see it rot away like Nazareth has. That is a real travesty. I haven't been there yet, but my buddies David Land and Kyle Cuthbertson have been there, and it's like visiting a gravestone.
Yeah, it's like seeing a human life decay, which is disturbing to see in Nazareth's current state. All I think about Nazareth is that Us and Them by Pink Floyd. Just the vibe of that song with Nazareth, slap it in, you're in for a rough mood emotionally.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know. They always invited me to go there because we go to Pocono for the IndyCar race when that was around every year, and I just said no, I couldn't do it.
well, I feel like Nazareth, in my opinion, there are a lot of red flags with the Nazareth track. In my opinion, they had poor management, just
Yeah.
awfully. And when their IndyCar IRL counterparts, I think the IRL said, "Okay, we're not doing any more racing there." They were really not with nothing left to spare. IndyCar really was their reach, and that track was opened in 1910.
Oh yeah, it's even older than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and in fact, that's where Mario and Aldo got racing over there. They were racing. They were racing the midgets over there when it was a dirt track before Penske bought it and turned it into a test track, and then he turned it into a racetrack. It was very poor management because Penske sold out to ISC. He sold Michigan, he sold California, and he sold Nazareth. They all used to be under the Penske banner. That's why if you look at the old logos, they had the old Penske trademarked logo on them. So Penske sold it off to ISC. Then ISC, I think, sold it again. But there's a local ordinance in the town of Nazareth saying that piece of property cannot be hosting a racing anytime soon.
And it's kind of sad how tracks like Nazareth, Milwaukee, even Trenton and Langhorne, the tracks along with Indianapolis that establish American open wheel racing, and it's just only Indy that is pretty active with racing right now.
I've heard some things about Milwaukee hosting races now. Like they haven't paid off the promoters yet for IndyCar, but they're hosting like I don't know if it was Silver Crowns or Modifieds. I forget what they were hosting, but they're still doing racing over there.
Yeah, there's still obviously Milwaukee's still going on just fine with other forms of racing. I think Cody H. Gaming went to one last year, if I remember. I think he must have posted a video, something recent from Milwaukee. At least we still have that track active in some capacity. But honestly, I don't know if you would agree with me on this. Honestly, Milwaukee should be on that calendar in some capacity. It's just need the finances and other stuff to fall in their favor.
Exactly. And it's tough getting a promoter because sometimes ovals are a tough ticket to sell these days.
Yeah, with everything that's happened in the past decade with Weldon, and then some promoters want it to be the championship race, Fontana, and other stuff.
Yeah, I honestly feel that it will be kind of cool, but
Fontana had a really good report going at the championship race, even though they had poor attendance. But when they moved the date in 2015, that was just it went down the drain, really.
Yeah, I feel you.
And they never recovered. But there is a possibility for IndyCar to recover at Fontana. They just need to get the dates right. And obviously, with what's going on now, that probably wouldn't be the best way to do it. IndyCar needs more 500-mile races. I think a Triple Crown needs to come back.
No doubt.
No doubt about it.
They really need that badly because when you think about it, the current car with the slim wings and the rear wings laid, it's only Indy and Texas. That's pretty much it. They only use that
500 miles. It's only a 600-kilometer event.
Yeah, and I'd imagine it'd be more expensive having the oval kit than the road kit when you only use it twice a year with the 500 and in Texas. Whereas last year you had Pocono. And then I forgot to mention, along with the whole thing with Weldon and then Fontana will not accept anything but the finale. You have the incidents at Pocono, which ultimately comes down to just need to update their safety features and get some new fencing, and then maybe they'll be okay. But with everything that is happening, it's going to be really difficult for the drivers to accept a return to Pocono or even Michigan at this point.
Yeah.
Michigan would be an awesome comeback. That would be a great event, but like you said, they got to get some serious upgrades with their fencing in order to do that because I mean, with these current cars with their slim wings and their sleek bodywork, it's not like with the air kits where you had giant pack racing. You don't have that.
Yeah.
So guess what? Somebody's gonna pull away and they'll break apart, and we'll have an old classic 500-mile race.
That's what the fans are looking for, in my opinion. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh yeah, me too.
So let's move on down to the FIA World Endurance Championship. They announced that their next season, which of course, if you noticed, they've used 2 calendar years since the 2017-18 season. That 2021 will be solely in 2021. They're not going to run. They're not going to begin their season in the fall, obviously due to the pandemic. They want to open the door for other races.
Yeah. Because I'm looking at the calendar here right now. The thing about WEC, like the FIA World Endurance Championship, their next 3 races, supposedly their next race is all the way August 15th at Spa. And which people don't know, August 15th is on a different date. It's usually you think Saturday, Sunday. Let me see the date. Never mind, it's a Saturday.
I was gonna say it would be a Friday like Sebring is.
Right.
Then it's Le Mans is the 19th to the 20th. The final race is Saturday, the 21st of November. Bahrain. They raced at Bahrain already. They're doing another 8-hour event at Bahrain on the 21st of November.
Gee, it would have been nice if they would have gone to Sebring a couple weeks before that, but that's not happening.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, there's just things we cannot control.
Nope.
Okay, let me see what else we have here. So let's talk about some of the esports races that happened over the weekend. There were 3 key events that we'll get into. So let's get started with the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama that was on iRacing this past weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I didn't get to watch much of the race. I don't know what the heck I was doing all day Sunday. I wasn't around, but I did hear Scott McLaughlin won, and let me tell you something. Is it confirmed that this is his last year of Supercars this year?
I think he confirmed something about this being it.
It
What was
sounds
that?
to be close to possible that most of the reports do say that Scott McLaughlin will leave to the United States after this year.
Yeah, that's what they said.
But yeah, he won this race, leading 12 laps over teammate Will Power. In a great duel and a good strategy.
Scott Speed.
Scott Speed
He
led 8
tried.
laps.
Yeah, and
Didn't he finish 4th or 3rd?
third in the 98, but he had the strategy of trying. He made it on fuel somehow, but he tried to win the race. But he had the old tires. That's how he got past. He
Right.
was on those older tires. But
Alex Paolo, Simon Pagino rounded out your top 5, and Felix Rosenquist on the lap. He finished 6th. Colton Herta 7th. Robert Wickens 8th. Joseph Newgarden, Santino Ferrucci 9th and 10th. And just go down the finishing order real quick. Dalton Kellett, Jimmy Johnson, Sebastian Bourdais, Graham Murray Hill, Oliver Askew, Scott Dixon, James Hinchcliffe, Ed Carpenter, Zach Veach, Kyle Kirkwood, Kyle Kaiser, Alexander Rossi, and Connor Daly. And then the retirements involved Pato Award, Marcus Erickson, Tony Kanaan, Sage Karam, Jack Harvey, and Felipe Nasr. So there you have the results. And I think Scott McLaughlin really made a statement in that race.
I was just gonna say, if that guy's coming to the United States this next year, these guys better watch out. This guy is literally one of the best races out there in the world right now.
All I really hope is there's a way for that Indy Grand Prix, the GMR Grand Prix debut happens. I know Jenna Pryor posted something that may not be possible. Then I heard something that it could be, but it's still up in the air. Whenever his debut is, I'm looking forward to it to happen. And speaking of Scott Speed, I think what he said in the post-race teleconference is that he, after getting involved in an incident with Joseph Newgarden, he had to save as much fuel and kind of clustered the whole strategy they were hoping for. So obviously a fuel economy, he was trying to save as much as he can. But good podium. He had a really quiet race. Even Watkins Glen, he had a real quiet race, but he was doing really well in Marco's car, which shows you that the thing about this is that Speed and McLaughlin have years of iRacing experience. Of course, Scott Speed was infamously known for his iRacing ordeal with the Global Rally Cross thing a couple years back, but it's good to see Scott Speed doing pretty well. And when they asked him about if he's ever going to do open wheels again, he pretty much ruled that out. He's just directly focused on stage rallying.
Right. And speaking of which, the grid rankings have Scott McLaughlin back in the lead for 2020. So yeah, there is that. Let's go ahead and check out the NASCAR Cup Series iRacing event, the 2020 Food City 150 laps. William Byron obliterated the field. He led 116 and 150 laps from the pole. All that, you do so many laps at Bristol and iRacing, it paid off clearly. He knows the iRacing version of Bristol more than anybody else, and it showed. John Hunter Nemechek, Timmy Hill, Denny Hamlin, Matt DiBenedetto was your top 5. Then Ryan Priest, Parker Kligerman, Tyler Reddick, Garrett Smithley, Michael McDowell, your top 10. Looking further down the 32 car field, we have Clint Boyer, Christopher Bell, Bobby Labonte, Alex Bowman, Austin Dillon, Ross Chastain, Joey Logano, Kurt and Kyle Busch, and Landon Castle, your top 20. Landon Castle had 4 laps. Then Jimmy Johnson finished 21st. Dale Earnhardt Jr., last car in the lead lap at 22nd. And then 4 laps down was Chris Buescher. 8 laps down, actually 9 laps down was Brad Keselowski. Then further back, Ty Dillon and Ryan Blaney was the last car that finished the race. Daniel Suarez and Kyle Larson were both ejected from the race, with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who crashed out.
Yep.
Chase Elliott crashed. Then Eric Jones disconnected, and Bubba Wallace quit. You want to talk about Bubba Wallace?
Not just crashed for Chase Elliott on his lid.
Yep.
Yeah, he was flying in the air. If you saw the picture of his car, that's what happens when you race online. Things like that happen. Physics.
Makes me not miss online racing years ago.
I was really surprised when Wallace quit. I've met him, and when I met him, I just took a photo with him, so I never really got to interact with him. But from what I've heard, he just seems like such a cool guy and such a nice guy. I cannot believe he quit that race, though, and especially his sponsor dropped him too. That's gonna, after what he did there, I'm sure a lot of other of his sponsors probably don't want to represent him anymore. Like we've seen kind of on-track incidents with him in real life before too. Kyle Busch, Alex Bowman, which I was kind of happy.
That was a very head-scratching moment.
And Brad Moffitt as well, ages ago.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Bowman Gray Stadium back in 2012?
Yep. But I know it's Bowman Gray, but I had to just bring up also Brad Moffitt because it's Brad Moffitt.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. But he's had his fair share of anger in racing in the past, but
he's had some run-ins. But that was kind of bizarre because 9 laps at Bristol is like a snap of a finger.
Yeah.
And you think, if he stayed in, he'd probably have a shot to get it back.
And you also said when somebody was 9 laps down, I was going to say that's not too big of a shame that 9 laps down at Bristol. If you're 9 laps down at Watkins Glen, I would feel sorry for you.
But it's shocking to see a driver quit in real life and virtual. I mean,
remember when Kyle Busch did that at the Charlotte Roval last year?
Yep.
But in contrast, Busch had a very damaged car and could not finish the last 5 laps or something.
Yeah.
But
that's a definitely different ordeal. And speaking of the Roval, it's interesting how one driver got so mad decided to toss water, and then another one was like this heartwarming moment with Ryan Newman and her daughters, because that was a scorcher. I tell you what, that was a definite scorcher when you have Ryan Newman lay on his car, because we know Ryan Newman is tough as nails, but again, that going back on track, it's just with Bubba, this is definitely not a good look for him, because with no real life racing going on, virtual sports pretty much become the main thing in sports right now. One of the more talked about things besides wrestling going on in MMA for whatever strange, odd reason. But the sponsors will be looking at you. Look at Timmy Hill, look at Garrett Smithley and Landon Castle. Their success brought eyeballs. That you have Blue Emu on Landon Castle's car, and Landon. I don't know if anybody noticed this. Look at his onboards from race to race from his home. He went from just having like a typical basement, minimal stuff. Then the next week when Blue Emu came along, he got product placements on the cup holder, and now he's got a whole full-blown studio with Blue Emu all over it.
Yep.
That's what you call good, excellent marketing and making the most of it.
Yeah.
With Bubba's ordeal, there's 2 faults in it. One's just leaving early and saying what he said, not taking this seriously. Sure, in some aspects there's fun and there's some seriousness, because they're all racers. There's some elements of both happening all the time, no matter what it is, whether it's iRacing or in real life counterparts. You're going to have that. And so when people hear you and it comes out, like, look at Todd Gilliland. Look at Todd Gilliland, what he said to Kyle Busch, which I was the been the guy that first heard, and nobody believed me at first until I finally posted it. Some people were mad about it. Some people were pleased that he said what everybody felt like, because there's just history of friction between Busch, Gillen, and also Harrison Burton. And it's just some people were happy, some people were not. Obviously, it led to Todd going to Front Row Motorsports. Even before then, there was no way I saw Gillen going back to Kyle Busch.
I knew, like, from early in the season, get ready for his last year. He might be. I thought he was going to be released early from KBM, like mid-season or something. But he finished the season and won for him. I mean, we knew that was coming. We knew his first win was coming long before the feud between him and owner Kyle Busch.
Yeah, and Todd Gillen, he's even though it took him so long to win in the Truck Series, he's a really talented driver. He won in K&N, ARCA, succeeded.
He has a lot left in him for a
and
career.
He's still young, and even though it took him a while to win in trucks, which really he only ran 19 races in 2018, or 2018,
Yeah.
and he ran the full schedule in 2019. So it's even though take a look, Harrison Burton didn't even score a win, and I expected Harrison Burton to win more than Todd Gillen, but he didn't even win once.
And look, Harrison Burton's doing completely fine and Xfinity. In fact, he is a championship contender once we get back and going.
It honestly doesn't surprise me Harrison Burton is that darn good, because I knew the moment he got that Gibbs deal, I said, this is where he's going to shine. Honestly, I think that's where he's going to shine, and so far he has. More on that some other time. But I honestly thought both Harrison and Todd were going to win last year. They were going to win some race because they were basically the best of the West and the top two regional guys. You got Todd from the West, Harrison in the East. They were the show stealers of the regional series, and they actually were. Whereas now the state of the East and the West is just Sam Mayer and hopefully, fingers crossed, Derek Griffith. In the West side, you don't have anyone. Jagger Jones is a free agent. Haley Deegan is now in Big Arca. Derek Krause in the trucks. The West side don't have anyone.
Still looking for that standout driver.
Yeah, and that's the thing about
Jagger Jones, Brittany Zamora. I can't believe they don't have a ride.
Oh, nothing. I'm going to take my media cap off for this regard. Nothing infuriates me more is not seeing Zamora from Washington and Jagger Jones in any form of full-time regional race. Nothing infuriates me more than just that. Because honestly, if those two were around, we would have a more
standings.
There'll be a more interesting championship battle. Because what McAnally did is they decided to go with all rookies. Jesse Love could be potential. I could see Jesse Love being a potential driver.
Years old.
Hey, 15. A 15-year-old, like.
And you have that other guy, Lawless Allen, Trotter.
Trotter may have some promise.
Who's the other driver?
They have Holly Holland and Gio Celsi.
Gio Celsi.
BMR is looking really strong, especially, they're going to be I can't say the new face of the West Series because they kind of already were.
They've been established in the West.
So, but
they don't have one.
Young drivers in their system. Derek Krause, he's definitely the top prospect in NASCAR. If I had to make a list of all the prospects in NASCAR, the top prospects, and I had to rank them, Derek Krause would probably be first or second. He's showed so much potential, not only winning a championship in the East or West, but he also contend for wins in the East when he would race there.
Yeah,
he won so much in BMR. They've had guys like, I guess, girls like Haley Deegan and Derek Krause. They were both basically the face of the K&N or now ARCA East or ARCA West series. So, now that BMR has some newer guys, Jesse Love, he's already his name was kind of out there already. He's really successful late model racer at such a young age too. I got the chance to interview him last year. He before this announcement was made, I knew for sure one day he was going to be full time in ARCA within these next couple of years. At just such a young age, only 15 years old. Mm-hmm. He's not even old enough. Well, yes, he is, but I cannot believe a 15-year-old is going out there and driving full time in there in the best team And
Yeah.
Gracie Trotter, she's another great driver. Lawless Allen, I know he's competing part time. He's a great driver. And Gio Sensi, since he's making that transition from dirt, I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to be able to do this year. And Holly Holland too. They got a lot of great young drivers in their system.
Yeah.
Yeah, they certainly have those young talented drivers. It's just more of a transitional time period for those like Celsi and Holly Holland. But right now, when you look at that landscape on the West, it's pretty much if Sam Mayer does to run the whole season, it's pretty much going to come down to Huddleston, Jesse Lubb, and Blaine Perkins.
Yeah, because like the thing about it is Huddleston was in the 9 last year. He's now in car 6. They put Perkins in the 9 like
Yeah, year prior he was in the 2018. He was in the 22. So this is just, it's like basically the Ben Rhodes effect, a different number every year.
like
I just we'll see how once the West comes back into full effect, we'll see how it does. But right now, when you look at the landscape of the West compared to a couple years ago with Todd Gilliland, it's a when you look at the talent in the East and when you look at the talent in the West, it's a complete 180, honestly, which is kind of a shame because that's the thing about the Bill McAnally teams.
yeah.
Their most successful drivers, we're still yet to honestly see a true transcending star. Sure, the most successful out of the McAnally camp is Brendan Gaughan, but when he went to Cup racing full time with Jasper Penske, it didn't work out at all.
Yeah.
So
Tell
you
me
have the Thor part of what's been a pretty good NASCAR career when you look at it. So I'm hoping for Derek Carlos and still for Todd Gilliland to change that because when you look at the driver lineup, there should have been at least 2 or 3 more out there, like an Austin Cameron or a Sean Woodside or even Eric Holmes.
Yeah.
I remember Eric Holmes back when I was
Yep.
little.
Yeah.
Everyone thought always going to be this next big thing, and it sucks that it didn't pan out. That was back in the Camping World West series.
Yeah, and back in the late '90s and early 2000s, the West Coast area was honestly were the future of the national touring drivers, whether it's the Winston West or the Southwest Tour. Now it's
go on.
now it's just purely from the East. It's pretty much all the future is coming from the East.
The East has it a little easier. The bigger, the more important tracks are closer by. The shops, the NASCAR shops are right there. Most of these drivers, I want to say, are Silver Spoon, but they're more hand-me-down drivers, second generation, third generation drivers coming in because their parents raised them while they were racing in the Cup Series. You see where I'm going?
Yeah, and I think what makes the West unique and special, and that's why I'm kind of so super enamored and passionate, is because they run those bull rings. The biggest disadvantage, of course, is that they don't run the national touring tracks like a Fontana. Well, fortunately, now they do with Phoenix.
They used to run Fontana.
Yeah,
but they have Phoenix, and they have the ARCA National Series because you can run the cars from East and West Series in the National Series.
Yeah, if you run the same number, like example,
to put a letter next to your name if you come from the East or the West.
Like Chase Tabor drove the 4E because he's from the East Series, and there's other drivers that had Zane Smith drove the 17W because that team's from the West, so that's what they did for that.
In my opinion, when NASCAR announced that they were buying ARCA in 2018, a lot of people had a thumbs down effect. They didn't like it. But you know what? Looking at it now, this is a win-win situation. I like what NASCAR's doing with ARCA.
Yeah.
It's pretty much came down. It's pretty much one of those they had no other choice because their ARCA car counts has, like both regional races, has been declining horrendously. Pretty horrendously, where back in the day you had 30, 40 cars. I think Rockingham had 50 when they returned when ARCA made a stop.
They had 50 cars in the ARCA race at Rockingham in the late 2000s. Joe Logano winning probably the most famous one of them.
And now they're hardly making 20 cars wherever they go.
Yeah, I was saying too, I thought years ago, the ARCA series used to draw 43 car fields, solid.
Yeah,
40, 50 car fields.
There's some years 2019. This year's Daytona race had 33. on the entry
Fairly
list.
low.
Yeah, and Con Nicolopoulos obviously finished last. He finished in the back, but
But there were it
please,
used to be like 43 cars in the ARCA race at Daytona.
yeah, well,
You want to go to let's go to 2010 here. They had a lot of cars in 2010. They had
yeah,
43, but there were thousands of D&Qs. I mean, we had 52 entries 10 years ago.
52. Oh
Yeah, for
my.
43 spots, and
Oh,
it was insane. We had a lot of people there, and
9 DNQs. That's yeah,
And not and also another thing about I think sometimes when you look at the car count, quality falls into it. Like a lot of people have complained about Indy Lights having 8 to 10 cars and all that, but look at the quality of racing they've had. And whereas to the West, we know it's going to be down to two teams. Fingers crossed, an outsider from the West does pretty well, like Cody Vanderwall, before Levine Racing went under, with the exception of the finale of Phoenix. Sometimes quality factors into it, but when you have a healthy amount of cars in the race, that also is important. But and I know for sure once Indy Lights gets going, whether there's 10 or 12 cars, they're going to put on a compelling show, regardless, especially in the Freedom 100.
oh, that never disappoints. The Freedom 100 is always a good one.
but I was just looking here. Toledo, Pocono, Michigan, and Madison had 18 cars. Like they're talking about Pocono and Michigan had 18 cars for ARCA. When you have 18 for that, it's like there's nothing. Like 18 cars.
But I think it makes the racing pretty good.
But like 18 cars, let me check. Pocono. There was only 4 cars on the lead lap at Pocono. Like when you get the 4 on the lead lap, that means there's not enough cars on the track. Like
So there are bigger races that have more cars in them. You know, no two ARCA races have the same level of importance. They don't always see the full field that mostly ARCA races.
Daytona had 35. Talladega had 26. You had Charlotte had 24. It's kind of sad that Nashville Fairgrounds had 20 entries, but Pocono has 18. It's kind of odd. Pocono's a bigger track. You have 18, but Fairgrounds has 20 cars. Like I'm looking at, but like Michigan, 18 cars also. Like
It boils down to budget, affordability, and a lot of things. Because every now and then, hearing and talking, communicating with one of the Carl Long crew members, there's a lot of stuff that just people don't take into the equation. That it's just extremely difficult, and even a couple people from the media side of things have pretty much pointed out that that it boils down to sometimes we got to think about quality versus over quantity. If the 18 car field is pretty good in quality, then it won't be much of a big talk. But if the field quantity is what we're talking about, it kind of tells you a lot. And that's why I brought up Indy Lights. I'm pretty sure as long as the racing and the junior formula talent pools is still phenomenal, like their ladder system is top notch, then nobody will be talking about 8 to 9 cars, because they're going to be talking about those 8 or 9 cars being potential IndyCar stars or open wheel phenomena around the world.
And look at the rookies we have in the IndyCar series this year. It's going to be a great contest once we get started.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. You know, the Mazda Road to Indy, in my personal opinion, is one of the most top-notch ladder systems to get to the top level motorsports. I mean, that's just
it
the way
shows. It shows.
Absolutely. You know, and I don't think anybody's really going to talk about, you know, having 7 or 8 cars. I mean, yeah, some of us, you know, we say, oh, it would be nice to have 1 or 2 more cars at the Freedom 100, or maybe somewhere like, you know, at Mid Ohio, St. Petersburg. But, you know, at the end of the day, they put on a good show, those guys. I mean, the Freedom 100 is one of the best races of the weekend. It's a good show.
Last year was Oliver Askew. He won by a nose. It was incredible.
Yeah, I think if the biggest problem with the ladder system right now is just, I think the biggest issue with the ladder is just mostly those sprint car guys from USAC getting opportunities, which has been difficult because you have You have obviously Jared Andretti running the Freedom 100. That was a pretty big deal. But you have imagine a Brad Sweet or I'm having a brain freeze with the Cody Swanson. Imagine those guys running a hopeful Indy or the Freedom.
That would have been.
It'll be a bigger deal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Brad Sweet running the Freedom 100. That would be sick. I like to see that happen.
Yeah, like that's the only big issue. It's just those USAC guys not getting opportunities. And that's pretty much the big issue with the system, with the ladder, the American Open Wheel ladder system. But other than that, like you said, my words exactly. And that's something that I've learned over the past couple of years, writing for Motorsports Tribune and whatnot. It's just how phenomenal that ladder system is compared to other ones are out there. And it's really showing right now when we have Pato Award, Oliver Askew, Renus VK, and just those guys out there. Even we still have one or two rookies that are not from the system, like an Alex Palou, that could do some noises. Look, Robert Wickens. He was part of the Atlantic days back in the late 2000s. It took him a decade to get back to American open wheel racing in the top level. But look what he's done in between.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And how about Santino Ferrucci comes over from Formula 2 over to the United States? Well, how's everybody last year?
Don't forget about those former F1 drivers, F2 drivers coming in IndyCar. It's not just people from the Hoosier State, but they still have those same opportunities. That's what makes IndyCar racing so special. Is you got guys from all different backgrounds coming in to the IndyCar ranks, and they all show some forms of talent. And now next we have Scott McLaughlin, who used to be, or who currently is one of the best touring car drivers in Australia right now. So it's clearly what we have.
I always say, if you're one of the best in the world, you got to compete on the world stage at the Indianapolis 500. That's one of my personal beliefs. And to have Scott McLaughlin part of the grid this year with all those ex-Formula 1 drivers, with all those guys from Formula 2, from the Mazda Road to Indy, it's one of the most perfect mixtures of talent that I've been an IndyCar fan since 2003, 2004. I've never seen the level of competition like it is today. It is absolutely just phenomenal, the amount of talent that is in that field. And a lot of young guys too. I'm not talking people like up there in age, like Tony Kanaan or Elio running the 500 only, or somebody like Will Power. I'm talking like these young guys. Like these guys are going to be on the front pages of the newspapers, the headline news at Indianapolis 500 one of these years. These guys are going to be the guys to talk about for the next decade. And it's amazing what they put on a great show. They're more of men than I'll ever be. They put their cars in places where it doesn't belong, and they make it stick.
And that's absolutely true, because if you really look at it, the door is wide open for IndyCar stardom to swarm in to the IndyCar series. It's right there. I think the incentives are higher than ever, and for NASCAR drivers to be in the Indy Grand Prix, hopefully, if it runs as now planned for the 4th of July weekend. I'm very curious to see it play out. I think this is a great year for racing. Hopefully, this pandemic will go away. Let's look down further. We did talk about some esports. Charles Leclerc won the Australian Virtual Grand Prix. Of course, this was supposed to be the weekend of the inaugural Vietnamese Grand Prix in Hanoi Street Circuit in Vietnam. Unfortunately, F1 2019 does not have that circuit in the game, so they just reverted to the last date at the Australian Grand Prix.
Yep.
And used that track, and Charles Leclerc won it from start to finish. He was dominant. Also, unfortunately, we have to talk about Bob Varsha, who we discussed a few months ago when he revealed that he had prostate cancer. Unfortunately, he tested positive for COVID-19, which is horrible. I always want to wish a speedy recovery. That's just stay home, guys. That's all I got to say.
That's the truth. And let me tell you something. People have been obeying that across the country, but here in New Jersey, New York, a lot of people haven't been doing that, and unfortunately, that's why we have this spike of cases we have here. I personally have a friend of mine whose father's in the ICU right now because he was a pilot and he contacted it from somebody who was traveling. Now he's in a hospital and he's on. I don't know if he's on a ventilator, but he's doing pretty bad. And a friend of mine lost his uncle because he had a compromised immune system. He got it. He passed away yesterday.
I'm very sorry. That's horrible.
And my sister, actually, I don't know if I told you, I kept this private, but my mother works in healthcare. We had a big scare the other day because some idiot went to like a tropical island and she got sick with coronavirus and she walked in the hospital and paraded around the whole friggin' building without telling anybody.
Oh.
It is such a low life thing for anybody to do.
At first, I didn't really take the virus that seriously. I wasn't really concerned. Because, it started off small. I know in China and other countries it was really bad. But, in America, at first, I kept using this term. That 45,000 people die from the flu every year. And, but now I'm starting to take it more seriously. I've been staying inside. I haven't really gone out and anywhere. I mean, I went to the gas station today, just on my way back from my grandparents' house, but that was it. Like I don't really haven't been doing much. So, but I wasn't taking it seriously at all at first, but now it's escalated a lot. And right here in my county, there's like 13 cases already. So it's a lot more serious than a lot of people think.
But I think the issue, Judson, is that I mean, if you look back at the Ebola outbreak in 2014, it was just Western Africa, and the coronavirus outbreak happened in the first two countries that had the massive spikes were, of course, China and Italy. Those are two very populated tourist attraction countries that involve professional sports on a daily basis. People are coming and going from there all the time. Think about it. Just the amount of people that are involved with those countries, and that's really just the sad part because, I mean, if you heard me decline a Skype call, I am very sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. What was I just going to add to that? I was going to add something to that. I've been studying the data for this virus. Like I'm a guy who is a statistician. I kind of study what's been going on, what kind of predictions are going to kind of go. I'm hoping they're right when they say, that this is going to all blow over by the month of May, and by Memorial Day, everything's going to all open up and resume life again.
You and I both in that regard, because I'll say this right now. With this year is pretty much the year I said to myself that I'll be at Indy or Charlotte at some capacity after I graduated college. This is by 2020, and we're in 2020 right now. So hopefully everything goes well because I really want to do the first Indy 500 come August. It's pretty much the one race I'm looking forward to more than anything else, and the most anticipated time period of my year, because I don't know. There's something about Indianapolis that there's something about it that I just want to be a part of it in some capacity and just see the whole festives and everything unfold.
I've been going this will be my 7th Indy 500 this year, and let me tell you, you're going to have an absolute blast. It's going to be worth the wait.
I definitely hope so, because it's been a big goal of mine, and everything that is happening, I hope it's really worth it, because while I'm more of a NASCAR guy, because since 2003, although I started watching IndyCar and Champ Car since 2004, the past couple of years, especially the past decade, watching Indianapolis 500, I was just thinking to myself that one day I'll be a part of it in some capacity. So with this thing going on, like I mentioned earlier, just got to use their heads, and hopefully by Memorial Day, the greatest Christmas gift happens and everything goes back to normal.
Well said.
Amen. That's what I'm hoping for. This was the year I started a new job. I'm making good money. I'm making the money I should have made 5 years ago. And now I literally work next to an airport. I'm like, come on, I want to go out to races.
Like the fantasy of just running to that airport and taking off to a track, right?
Exactly. I have the freedom to do whatever I want now. So come summertime, I'm going to have a little answering machine that says, I'm at the track. Sorry, leave me a message.
That sounds perfect. So we are coming to the end of this podcast. I think we have everything covered. Just throw in some final words while we're at it.
Well, subscribe to JRN, Judson's Racing Network. We're at about 145 subscribers right now, so let's make it 150.
Well, first off, even though I'm a retired YouTuber, there's Auto Rock and Racing 94 going around. You can look at my red flag data board. It's the red flag video scopes from 1990 through 2019. My last video for the foreseeable future focuses on the best of the 20 teens in NASCAR. Whether you think 2010 to 2019 is a full decade or not is there. Twitter at the LT Files, at the LT Files on Twitter. Instagram, Luis D as in David Torres, TORRES 94. First name, you see it on the board, so you'll figure it out. And of course, the site that I write for and take photos, motorsportstribune.com, Facebook, Motorsports Tribune, and on Twitter at motorsportstrib, TRIB. There's some good things coming out of there soon, hopefully. And my final comment is hopefully Barcia pulls through, because after this, I'm going to be watching the rest of the Formula One on NBC panel reuniting shortly.
This is Robbie Noonan, Race Day 2011. Just wishing all of you a safe and happy, healthy holiday coming up. And hopefully everybody's all healthy when they come back for racing coming in the month of June, a month of May, whenever it resumes. My channel name is Race Day 2011 on YouTube. I review lots of merchandise regarding diecast, IndyCar, sports car, IMSA, WEC. Just look up Race Day 2011. Boom, you'll find it there. Just hopefully everybody just hangs it in there. We're only got just a little bit more left, hopefully. So just hang in there, fellas.
All right. And, give my Twitter a follow at JLP Snipes. So yeah, everyone, thank you for joining. That was a great episode. Well needed to talk about some racing and get outside of the COVID-19 situation. Judson, Robbie, Luis, thanks for coming. You guys are more than welcome to come back for another episode or two. We are always on the look for guests.
Thank you so much for letting me come. I've never been on a podcast. This was a blast. So thank you again.
All right, thank you guys, and have a good one. We will see you next week for episode 54 of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. Have a good night.